The following is an encore presentation of a podcast episode that first dropped on February 7th, 2024. From the studios of the Optimism Institute, welcome to the Blue Sky Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Burke, and in every Blue Sky episode, we'll be speaking to leaders, researchers, and thinkers whose stories and insights will remind us that there is always blue sky above. Sometimes you just have to get your head above the clouds to see it. If you've listened to more than a few of our Blue Sky episodes, you know that we've covered a wide range of topics. As you'll soon discover, our conversation today aligns as much or more closely with the core mission of the Optimism Institute than any that we've done to date. This is because our guest, Chris Anderson, has written a remarkable new book, Infectious Generosity, that is all about his mission to lead a movement to reclaim the internet as a force for good, spreading an ethos of kindness and generosity and pushing back against the online forces of rage and division that seem to be getting the upper hand. Chris Anderson is uniquely qualified to lead this inspiring effort. For more than 20 years, he's been in charge of the TED organization, and in this role, he oversaw their transformation from being simply a conference company to one that achieved global reach and impact by making their videos freely available online. Seeing so many of these talks go viral and create tremendous positive impacts inspired Chris to do more, and his vision is outlined in his new book, the proceeds from which he will donate to TED. I hope you enjoy this inspiring conversation with Chris Anderson as much as I did. Chris Anderson, welcome to the Blue Sky Podcast.
It's great to be here, Bill.
I'm so happy to have you. I loved your book, Infectious Generosity, and so much of what you write about is central to what we're trying to do here with the Optimism Institute and this podcast. So I'm really excited for this conversation. I wanted to start by talking about your experience at TED and what it was about the arc of your career there and the growth of TED that has influenced the way you think about the potential of the internet and to do the kind of things you write about in your book.
Sure thing. So wind the clock back to 2006. I'd been running TED for a few years then. I'm a media entrepreneur, had a chance to take over this crazy conference. At the time, it was just an annual conference, technology, entertainment, design. A few hundred people went to it. No one had really heard of it. It was being run inside a nonprofit. I'd used a nonprofit, long story, but I used a nonprofit to buy it because that was the only way I had to buy it, actually. And so we were trying to figure out how to let the magic that happened at TED out into the world, and had failed to figure out how. TV didn't seem to want it, and then this technology came along, online video, that allowed us to contemplate just giving it away online. So there was a big debate internally, because if you do that, aren't you killing your conference? And we hummed and hawed, and eventually we went for it. And to our delight, far from killing the conference, it actually enhanced the conference, because these talks went viral, and suddenly a lot of people around the world wanted to be part of TED. And so it was that experience really that hammered home to me just the truth of how different the rules are in the connected age, and that if you can give away something crazy and radical, you may be amazed at what happens next. And so that really informed our strategy at TED going forward, and it certainly is the seed of the idea in this book.
And like you said, it seems like an obvious decision now, but that was pretty courageous at the time to give things away. And then another thing I had never realized until I read your book is what the structure is of the TEDx. So to really blow this out, you took the courageous step of essentially loaning your brand out to people all over the world.
Yes, exactly. So TEDx is a free license that allows anyone anywhere to put on a TED-like event. There are some rules, but there's no money involved. But what happened? I mean, the fear was that we would lose control of everything, and that awful things will be done because we don't control the speakers who are booked, etc.
Right.
A lot of people advised against it. You can't mess with your brand in this way.
I'm sure.
But it turns out that when you give your brand away in certain circumstances, amazing things can happen. We ended up, over a few years later, suddenly there were 3,000 TEDx events being held around the world, and they were generating 1 billion online views. I mean, this was a media company. This little part of TED is
Yes.
10 people out of the 200 people who work at TED. 10 people oversee this. But they're overseeing 65,000 volunteers plus who are out there working on your behalf and doing events that we could never have imagined. And so to have something of that scale just done with the small people, it's only possible through I would say, the magic of infectious generosity. You give something away. We were stunned at what people did with it. They gave us so much back, and they gave the world so much back, honestly.
Incredible. And so when I talk to people about the internet, particularly social media, and whether it helps them be more optimistic, helps them be happier, generally you get not at all. And yet there are things like TED that we should remind ourselves are just incredibly powerful. But you're calling on people in this book, Infectious Generosity. You're asking us all to reclaim the internet. And in doing that, it begs the question, how did the internet go astray in the first place? I mean, it started with so much promise. It's going to bring us all together, these seamless interactions, transactions. You talk about a tragic design flaw in some of the social media platforms. I'd love to hear your thoughts for everybody about how did we go wrong in the first place?
Mm. So it's been painful to see. I mean, I was an outright tech optimist for many years,
Sure.
and part of my motivation, I guess, for writing the book is I don't want to let that optimism go. I cannot stand what happened with social media. I cannot stand the fact that a lot of people with some validity see social media as this outrage generating machine that I don't think there was an evil plot of people decided that the best way they can make billions in advertising dollars is to turn humans against each other. I think people were trying to build social media platforms that connected people to each other, and they wanted to maximize interaction between people. So we built these algorithms that looked for what people were actually doing and saying, well, let's amplify what they're doing, because if people are doing things for a reason, if we amplify that, we'll have more and more engagement, and that will be wonderful for everyone. But the tragedy is that I think it's the wrong way to think about people. People are more complicated than that. Like in my model, at a minimum, you have to think of people as having this sort of instinctive self, or lizard brain, for want of a better term,
Yes.
And a reflective self. The lizard brain actually calls most of the shots. Mostly, as Danny Kahneman would say, we're driven by fast thinking, system one thinking, and it's amazing what those highly evolved over hundreds of millions of years systems will do, and how the nuance of a lot of the instincts and how they drive us. It's powerful. It's how all of the fast decisions we make are driven by those systems. And yet, our system two thinking, our reflective thinking, which is a more recent evolutionary development, is often necessary for us to summon our better angels. It's our system two thinking, our reflective selves, that is telling the story of our lives. It's telling us at night, am I proud of myself today? Was I the person I wanted to be, and so forth. And so if you take doom scrolling, which is how many of us now experience social media, that is fundamentally a lizard brain activity where we're sort of there gazing at our screen, scroll, 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 scroll. There was a study that said that a typical social media user is scrolling in a day the length of the Eiffel Tower.
I never heard of it that way.
and it's and we're kind of in zombie mode. I mean, it's pleasurable, you can see a lot of stuff you like, you can see a lot of stuff that's energizing, but basically that mode, the way that mode works when it comes to the political stuff, is that it is so powerful to activate people's sense of threat, sense of danger, sense of worry about the other side. And so by focusing purely on attention, we are turning ourselves into lizards, into giant angry lizards who shout at each other and thrash our tails at each other. And it's horrible. It's horrible. It's very, very dangerous. And we have to fix this, or we won't be able to fix anything else.
And like you said, it's preying on only part of our human nature, because increasingly, at least what I'm reading, the research suggests that as human beings, we're actually also hardwired to be generous, cooperative. Rutger Bregman's book, Humankind, drove this home really well, and yours does also, or Steven Pinker, that we do better as a species when we cooperate and are generous, and it's one of the reasons we've survived. So that's something you're trying to tap into with infectious generosity.
Yeah, 100%. And it's complicated, right? Because the generous part of us, there is part of that is part of our lizard brains. Like if you see someone suffering, you will instantly feel an urge to help them. It may be
Right.
overridden by other things, but you will feel that urge. That is part of your system one thinking. It's instinctive. The task of generosity, I think, is to apply our reflective thinking to that urge and to try to direct it wisely. And if we do that, it is just amazing what can happen, because the very same internet that spreads all this meanness is completely capable of spreading beautiful things. And so that's the question. Tactically, can we figure out how to turbocharge that part of what we share so that we can win this? It's a battle for attention online, and we can show a kinder world. We can say to each other, actually, humans aren't all evil through and through.
Right,
They're capable
right.
of amazing things. And if we paid a little more attention to that and shared those stories in a more thoughtful way, what we see every day would look very different.
It's a battle I think we can win, and I'm trying to fight it my small way every day. Before we get into the tactics, there's one more benefit to what you're espousing that I wanted to talk about, which is just overall happiness. There's so much literature and online stuff about how you become happy, and sometimes it references this, but it doesn't always. Being generous actually makes us happy. You had a proverb, a Chinese proverb in your book, and you did a great caveat at the beginning saying it sort of shortchanges marriage, which made me chuckle, and you'll understand it when I read this. But the Chinese proverb is, if you want happiness for an hour, take a nap. For a day, go fishing. For a month, get married, hence the caveat. For a year, inherit a fortune. For a lifetime, help someone else. I thought that was so powerful. And can you talk about the relationship between generosity and happiness?
So it's powerful and it's very real, and there's substantial science backing it up and proving it, including a new experiment that I talk about in the book. What's weird about it is that it's veiled from us a lot of the time. I think, someone wants to be generous. They don't feel, oh, that's going to make me happy. What they may feel is, I don't want to lose something. Loss aversion is a powerful instinct, and we're much more inclined to say, oh, my path to happiness is to persuade this incredible person to go on a date with me, or to get this giant pay increase, or whatever. That's what's front of mind. And so we have to pay attention to what science teaches, to the wisdom of sages throughout history, and to our own honest reflection on our own lives. Actually, those moments of generosity can be so powerful. They can help you whisper to you hear that whisper at night. I'm proud of what I did today. This is the person I want to be. I actually get joy from being my better self. And so, to the extent that life is a quest for meaning and happiness, I think it's essential for people to bake in some commitment to generosity. And there's all kinds of ways of being generous. It's not just money, but there's all kinds of ways. But to bake some of that into our lives, I think is absolutely essential if we want to be joyful.
It's easy to imagine how contentious the arguments must have been when Chris and others at the TED organization first considered putting their content online for free. Fortunately, they moved ahead with this bold plan, and we're all the better for it. To then take the next step of creating TEDx and allowing others all over the world to use their brand was perhaps even more bold and transformative. This also showed how efficient the internet allows us to be, with just 10 TED staffers overseeing the efforts of 60,000 people around the world. Chris describes himself as a tech optimist, and I like the way he says he doesn't want to let that go. That's a challenge for all of us, in a world where an optimistic outlook is often seen as naive, and negativity and pessimism are often rewarded with greater attention. Chris says that this more negative side of human nature is triggered by social media's ability to stimulate our lizard brains, activating our sense of threat, danger, and anger. And by the way, ever since I spoke to Chris, I'm finding myself watching people hunched over their cell phones, and sometimes I'd swear it looks like they've taken on a posture that's downright reptilian. But I digress. Chris makes it clear that the very same internet that can be used in a negative way can also be a remarkable tool for good. And I agree with him that humans are capable of amazing things. I see this every day in my work at the Optimism Institute and through the time I spend speaking with remarkable people like Chris. And now, back to our conversation. And you wrote in the book about, you said these are age-old things that we've known. Tithing in the Bible. There was another concept I wasn't aware of. It was
zakat
in the Muslim
Islam
tradition.
Yes.
Which I was not aware of. But it goes way back. And part of your point in the book, though, is that especially in this country, in the United States, we've become a lot less quote unquote religious. And so maybe the internet plays a role in sort of reinforcing reputation, as opposed to, when you were a kid, you were raised that God was watching everything you did. A lot of people don't believe that anymore, but in a lot of ways, the internet's watching a lot of what we're doing. And if we want to do the right thing, that the internet can actually play an reinforcing role in a positive way.
Yeah, so this is complicated, and I think not everyone who reads this book will love this particular part of it. But it is a theory I put out there. Like mostly, so one of the big reasons to be generous is in this connected age is not only because it's so much easier to give really big things to an unlimited extent, free distribution, etc. It's because those gifts carry with them reputation, and they and that is the most important currency of this connected age. And so I was thinking a lot about reputation, and which really comes from the fact that it's what people think of you, and mostly you want that to work on the upside, that people think the better of you. But there's another factor in this sort of issue of ever-growing transparency online, which is that our bad stuff can be called to account as well. If you do something that's really obnoxious, there's a chance someone's going to see it, and and it will come and bite you back. And we want to think that is horrible. I think that part of that is actually good. I think it's good for people to live with a slight fear or risk of discomfort. We traditionally always have, is the point. And so my honest take of my own youth, when I believed that God was watching over every single thing I did, was that there were times when that did make me a better person. And by walking completely away from that, we may be giving ourselves a very tough psychological battle to overcome, to try and manage all of humans' good behavior just purely through upside incentive. I don't know if that is actually going to work.
That was a really provocative part of the book, I thought. Okay, so we've laid out some of the reasons why this would be a good thing to accomplish this infectious generosity. Let's talk about tactics, Chris. How do you see us all banding together and pulling this off and achieving the vision you outline in the book?
Well, the thing we have to overcome is the psychological bugs that we have, which lead to the fact that basically the dark is compelling, goodness is boring. It's every movie maker kind of knows this. Every journalist, in a way, knows this, and and there's obvious evolutionary reasons why we pay more attention to threats than we do to opportunities. It's a matter of survival, but it does lead to distortion in what gets shared and what is most prevalent online. And so we have to be smart here and figure out what does it take to make the good stuff go viral. And the truth is that there are many, 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 many people who are working on this and have cracked the problem in different ways. And I suggest a few things that will work from sort of content that really engenders just authentic human emotion. It starts right there. I mean, this Facebook group, the Kindness Pandemic, took off just starting with just the gift of a box of tissues to neighbors in a building during pandemic lockdown. If you want one, take one. and this moved someone. They put the picture up online. Boom! It spawned into this incredible movement of 500,000 people with full of stories of human kindness. They are everywhere. We just don't pay attention to them. When you read the stories on that group, you shed a tear and you think, wow, the world is full of people who are lovely. And it all just starts with show something in an authentic way. It doesn't have to be a big thing. It's just something that triggers emotion, and that may be what it takes. Obviously, charities are very familiar with this and often use that arguably almost exploitatively, but that's one piece of it. And then there's others that I talk about: creativity and courage. Insane levels of creativity often are sort of good content is sort of presented worthily and not. People go, yeah, that's lovely, but then they're not grabbed by it. To the extent that we can be much more creative, to the extent that we can be much braver, I think we have a shot at really breaking out of the sort of the narrow confines in which we often live online.
Yeah, and I think you use the expression "get insanely creative," and you use an example that I was glad you used because it always comes back to me, which is the ALS bucket challenge. I mean, that started as this goofy thing with the Boston College baseball team, and went around the world, and you just couldn't have made that up or assumed that it would do what it did, but it did. And what was that chord that it struck? And it's important for us to think about that because that to me is a phenomenal example.
Yeah, for people who don't remember that, basically, you were tagged by someone else on social media to take part in this challenge. You had to mention the cause and then basically dump a bucket of ice water over your head and then name two other people. So what was genius about it was that it was creative, it was funny, so it evoked emotion that way. Humor is one of the best emotions to evoke. And of course, in the actual structure of it went viral because each individual who did it was supposed to tag, I think, 3 others. And so even if the chain broke down here and there, by and large, it would go on. I was tagged by bloody Bill Gates, and so I had no choice but to do it. And
that's a heavy tag.
I know, and it was, and I didn't do a very good job. But anyway, that was a very clever thing.
And by the way, though, we laugh. That's a great example, though, that Bill Gates made the decision to participate.
He did,
and because one of the things you talk about is amplifying and taking a message and making it big. And so obviously we have outsized personalities with massive followings online who can have a huge impact. But again, this started with a college baseball team, and we all can do it. And I think that's something that's really important. And also, Chris, one of the things that frustrates me when people complain about social media, and I'm one of them, I have some real concerns about the net effect of it. But we're not helpless, right?
100%.
We choose who we follow. We can, we can walk around with a bucket of water or a bucket of gasoline, and when we see the embers, we can throw water on it, we can blow it up. And one of the things I finally figured out, I think it was on Twitter, I was like, why do I keep seeing this nasty stuff from this person I don't even know? And then I realized, it's because my friend follows them. So maybe I got to, right? Maybe I got to block I didn't know my friend had this side to them, that they would follow this person. But the overall point I'm trying to make is I think we have an active role to play in the impact of social media by who we follow and where we put our attention.
100%. And that very act, that careful, reflective choice making, will actually influence the algorithms. It will actually influence what other people see as well.
Right,
so if you go online and look for example, on X, there's an account I love by a guy called Massimo Orgiazzi. Every day, there's an Italian guy. He's really ill, but every day he posts these incredible links to the wonder of the universe, or some explanatory thing on science or whatever. I mean, it's a fantastic account. And if all you did on X was to follow him, you would think social media was the best thing ever. There's a guy called Ami Dar who's trying to be a sort of a voice of sanity in the current Israel-Palestine situation. And there are people out there like that. And if you follow them, and if you then like their tweets and you spend time in them and share them, you will change what other people see as well. And so the battle isn't that badly lost. There's already a lot of amazing stuff online if you look for it, and I just think it might take 10 or 20% of people to adjust their behavior by 10 or 20%, and you could see a ripple effect there that could be beautiful.
I saw it happen in real time over a year ago when I started the Optimism Institute. I made a conscious effort to clean up my feeds. And just as we lament the fact that these algorithms spin us into a dark place, if you're active about it, it can actually spin you into a much brighter place. And all of a sudden it's feeding me things that were so positive and lovely. It's like, okay, this actually goes both ways. It's an amazing thing.
100%.
I don't think people realize that. It's sort of that parable, and I won't get it right, but the two wolves that are fighting inside you, and which wolf's going to win? It's the wolf that you feed. and that's I think a lot about our experience on the internet.
And I think those wolves are real. I was brought up religious, and I was taught to believe that what the name of one wolf was the devil and the name of the other wolf was God. But I actually think these different psychological systems that we have are often in a battle. It affects so many aspects of our lives, Bill, like from working out, can we get enough exercise? Can we control our diet? Can we spend enough time and commitment to the people we really want to? These are all battles between our instinctive selves and our reflective selves. And that it's a real battle. And so, go wolf reflective, I say.
Chris says some really interesting things here, including the idea that it's good for some people to live with some fear, and that this can lead to better, more honorable behavior. Many parents in the audience will understand that in those final days leading up to Christmas, the notion that Santa sees you when you're sleeping, knows when you're awake, and knows if you've been bad or good is pretty darn effective in keeping the kids in line. And it's helpful to remember what Chris says about the dark being compelling and the good being kind of boring. This explains why the media often portray a world that looks far worse than it truly is. It's helpful to remind ourselves that, as Chris says, the world is full of people who are lovely, and that when it comes to the internet, quote, the battle isn't that badly lost, unquote. Getting back to our blue sky conversation, I wanted Chris to reflect on the unique qualities of this time in history that make his vision of infectious generosity entirely realistic. The other thing, Chris, I think that is helpful to people as they consider what you're advocating is that we live in an incredibly unique moment in history to do this. So, if I were generous 100 years ago, maybe 5 people would notice, maybe. We now have the opportunity not only to reach this many people. So my background was in cable television, and even 25 years ago, the content was very expensive. It was hard to reach new viewers. You had to get a deal with the cable company, blah blah blah. Now you did have the fact that adding a new subscriber though really didn't cost you anything. Today, the content is almost free. It's digital currency, as you talk about. We're trading these things that aren't really things. The distribution is almost completely frictionless. We have an opportunity right now that has never existed before in the history of the planet. Is that a fair way to describe it?
100%. I mean, this is what gave me this sort of slap across the forehead in a moment when I was thinking about what was happening with TED and just thinking about, I mean, look, the internet's so super familiar with all of us. And so maybe none of this is surprising to people, but I think when you put together the following pieces, one, the things that we care about today are increasingly non-material things. They're things that actually can be shared online. We spend so much time with videos or listening to music or enjoying beautiful art or photography or engaging in software or apps. Like all this stuff can be shared online. One. Two, it can be shared to at no cost to indefinite extent. So something really valuable can be shared to an unlimited number of people if it's lovely. So, and then 3, it carries with it reputation. 4, generosity makes you happy. It's everything stacks up here to saying that we should reevaluate the role that generosity plays in our lives as individuals and as organizations, and that it's not, you don't have to view it as, oh, well, I ought to do the generous thing because I want to be that person. You can actually say it is the smart thing to do. It's actually in many ways, the only smart thing to do. As a every organization, I think, should have their generosity strategy. And I kind of use the word deliberately and a little bit provocatively, because we think of generosity, no, that's from the heart. You can't have a strategy. No. You actually can. We should celebrate people having a generosity strategy, because if we do that and embrace that, a lot more people will be generous. And there so many things can be transformed in an organization or an individual if you go this route. It's at least worth a half day to brainstorm it. It really is.
Can we pause on that? Because again, I want to talk about these tactics about how this is really going to work. And you said every organization can have a generosity strategy. Could you give an example? Maybe it's a for-profit business. What would a generation strategy possibly look like?
So say you're a successful company, you know something that other people don't know. Your instinct is, that is the last thing I should give away. That is my competitive advantage. A generosity strategy might say, are you so sure about that? What if you actually gave it away at full blast? What would happen then? So in one example I quote as a sort of possibility of the book, what if GE said, we're going to tell everything that we know about wind power to the world. We're going to have an open university course. We're going to invite people in. What's happened in wind in the last couple of decades is sensational. The costs have fallen. It can change the planet. We need everyone on board with this. What would that do? Would it give some competitor some advantage that they currently don't have? Possibly. But it would also recruit a bunch of amazing people to you. It would help show the world that actually GE is one of the great experts on wind energy. It would build reputation. It would make everyone there feel proud at what they're doing. So it's worth a brainstorm, is what I'm saying. Like, the giving away of knowledge. What we found was that the loss that you get, in our case, it was the loss that people who were paying for a conference no longer had exclusive access to that knowledge. That is offset by the fact that so many more people have these incredible benefits from it and want to give something back. They want to respond. They say, well, how can we partner with you? How can we work with you, etc. There's all these other things that could happen as a result of that. And I think any organization could, I think you start with, what is the most valuable thing we have that could, in principle, be given away online? That would be the first question to ask.
Yeah, and I think given the virality of things and our access to information, it also goes right to the consumer. So I think of Guy Chouinard at Patagonia and some of the things that he's done with that company. And now I'm a consumer. I have a choice. I can buy an item from this, a jacket from this company, that company, or that company. Gee, I really like what they're doing with their stock. I really like what they're doing with the environment. I'm going to buy that one. So it can trickle right down to the grassroots consumer.
100%. I mean, look, in the age that we're in, most of the value that is created in any company is created by the minds of the people who are in that company. We're not, we're in the knowledge age now. People don't want to work for a company that isn't contributing to a better future. They don't. So the best people won't stick with you if they don't think you're being as generous as you could be to the planet and to the future in whatever way. And so I think just from the point of view of staff attracting the best people, retaining them, a generosity strategy makes so much sense. And you're right that at the consumer level, when consumers learn that certain companies are taking radical steps to be generous, they will support it. A lot of people buy Chobani yogurt because they like the fact that it's a generous company. It's been generous to its people.
Right. At the same time, we talk about reputation. You said something in the book that really stuck with me, because I've been guilty of this, which is insisting on perfect generosity or criticizing the way in which someone is generous. So, for example, wealthy person A gives to charity B, and someone says, well, they should have given to charity C, or, oh, it's about time they gave some money away, or, boy, they could have given away twice as much as that, and sort of trying to get away. Or people who, I was raised by people who wouldn't put their name on anything. If they gave money, it was always anonymous. And so I had this thing of, oh, they just want their name on the building. You talk about, let's get away from that. Can you give some more color on that?
Yeah, so I actually think this is an incredibly important move that we all have to collectively make in this connected age. And the reason is that because the upsides of people being generous are so much greater than they've ever been before, because things can spread across the planet, we need to do everything to encourage people to be generous. We need, and so the key shift I argue for is that, yes, let go of perfect generosity. I actually don't think generosity has ever been perfect, in the sense that there's always been some motivation. I was taught up, even in religion, give and you shall receive, or give and your reward will be in heaven.
Yeah.
That is
right.
That is selfish generosity.
That's a transaction.
It's generosity. It's like, it's still hard to do, but it's imperfect. But that's okay. So if we just made the flip of thinking, instead of looking for the bad motivations of people, look for the good motivations. If you can, every motivation is mixed, as far as I'm concerned. If someone is doing something in part because they want to help the world, celebrate that. And the fact that they are getting massive viral spread from what they're doing, and maybe there are some benefits come back to them, celebrate that too. That's part of the magic of it. And I think we have let cynicism play far too big a role here. And in a way, it acts as this sort of perfect excuse and shield. I don't have to feel guilty about anything I'm doing if I can tear down what someone else is doing. We can't afford that now. We really can't. So I think we should go all in on generosity as something to be celebrated for all its motivations. And actually make them public. It's great that you get viral spread. It's great that you feel happier about it as a result. Those are good things. Don't be embarrassed about them. Celebrate them.
I think it applies to generosity in just about everything. If our default position was assuming good intentions of other people, the world would be a very, very different place. And another concept I'm a big fan of and talk about a lot here is gratitude. And I was surprised and pleased to see you pause and write about gratitude and the importance of that in the book. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. All generosity starts with a generosity mindset. You have to be ready to look to other people, to take other people's needs seriously. And most of the time we're not there. We're actually locked in our own world where, you're walking to work and focused on a little bit of stress about what's coming up during the day. And you don't notice the person in need who you just walk past. Or if you do, you just feel a moment of discomfort and then move on. So what makes a huge difference is if you take a moment each day to think about the many things you could be grateful for, it changes. Humans are wired to respond to generosity with generosity. Gratitude is essentially an act of paying attention to the generosity we have received, just by the fact that we're alive. Generosity from the universe, or however you want to frame it. But it's amazing that we're alive. We're a 1 in a countless trillions chance of lottery. Like the very fact that you open your eyes and you see this amazing world out there with all of its richness, and that it's different today than it will actually be any other day is incredible. The fact that there are people who can tolerate us and love us is amazing. Could be grateful for that. The fact that the internet is here, I think it's amazing. I think this is a great time to be alive. The fact that you can turn on a tap and have a glass of drinking water on demand anytime. Almost no one in history has had that. And so there's all these things that you can pay attention to and get delight from. And it makes it so much easier then to say, oh, actually, you know what? I think I will just take a moment to look at someone. And the first, and in many ways, one of the most powerful acts of generosity is just to see someone, to pay attention to them. If people feel seen, that can make someone's day. Just that. It costs you very little. Actually, it does cost discomfort, but it can make someone's day. And so if just starting there, yeah, but it comes from gratitude.
And now, a quick break and recommendation to fans of the Blue Sky podcast for another weekly show we think you'll enjoy. It's called Two Lives. Each week on Two Lives, you'll hear about someone who faced darkness and how that moment transformed them. The title comes from the quote, "We all have two lives. The second begins the moment we realize we only have one." It's a well-crafted, character-driven, nonfiction, narrative storytelling podcast that's been featured on Apple Podcasts as a show we're loving and listed among Spotify's best episodes. It just won a Signal Award for the best indie podcast and was a runner-up at the International Women's Podcast Awards. And I like this description of their audience. They say, Two Lives appeals to people who are drawn to the self-help section of the bookstore and binge Queen's Gambit on Netflix. Two Lives spotlights diverse, dynamic characters from the BIPOC, LGBTQ, disabled, and neurodivergent communities. It's no surprise that this podcast comes from a creator who experienced her own Two Lives moment. This is a show worth checking out, and you can find it wherever you get your podcasts. Okay, you know that your humble host here hates to brag, but are you keeping track of all the 100% I was getting from Chris Anderson? As the late, great Stuart Scott might say, I must have been butter, because I was on a roll. And that felt pretty good coming from a guy with so many IQ points on me and a stylish British accent to boot. Anyway, I also love in this section how Chris lays out all the many reasons why we do well to be generous, even some that are, ironically, a little bit selfish. And I find it very interesting and a fun challenge to think of ways that organizations could have a generosity strategy. This is something that some of you in our audience might want to think about. I also appreciate Chris's insistence that we push back on this notion of perfect generosity and his idea that generosity has always been imperfect. And let's get over this impulse of criticizing the way others try to do their part. And lastly, I want to underscore the points Chris makes about gratitude. We spend so much of our time focused on all that's wrong that we take so many things for granted, like, as he says, running water or the internet. Now, to our final section with Chris Anderson, starting with a conversation about neuroplasticity. The other thing that's been amazing in recent years is this notion and proof of neuroplasticity. I interviewed Richie Davidson, who's this incredible thinker on this subject, and he talks about gratitude and before you eat a meal, looking at your plate and thanking whoever grew the corn and got it on your plate, and that you do this for a fairly short period of time. You're actually rewiring your brain. We've always known that you could lift weights and get bigger or run and get thinner, but the brain we thought was constant. It actually physically can change, and then that changes your outlook.
100%. And that applies in so many ways here. I mean, first of all, it shows again why the stories we tell ourselves, it really matters. Like, we are literally, as a human race, we're talking ourselves down into the gutter right now. And it's not as if the stories that we're telling ourselves are kind of true. I don't think. Then it's not like we're just missing this vast, for the reasons we talked about, we're missing this vast other side of us that we're just not sharing. And so that has the stories we tell ourselves impact who we are. And so there's a horrible, horrible downward cycle at work there. And then secondly, just the exercise of generosity, you can think of it as a muscle. You know, if the more times you do it, the easier it gets. Because, I mean, for one thing, you discover that there's joy in it.
Yes. And you've referenced history a couple of times. People listen to this podcast know I'm a history buff. And one of my favorite lines was from a guest, Kevin Kelly. And he said, if you only read the news, you'll think that things have never been worse. But if you read history, you'll realize things have never been better. And I think that's really important. And again, to this cause that you're advocating, we have never lived in a time where we could launch the kind of initiative that you're advocating. And so to that point, Chris, you've been on a very active book tour. I'm going to ask everyone I know to buy and read your book.
Thank you.
Where do you go from here? You get this book out to as many people as possible. Are you staying with TED and trying to continue to grow that? How are you going to try to use this incredible platform you're creating?
Let's see. I'd say a couple of things. First of all, on TED, I love TED and will be staying with it. But I'm not full time on TED now. I have a wonderful executive director, Jay Hirati. The TED team is incredible, but I'm mainly focused on the big annual conference that happens there. That has opened up time to work on this thing called the Audacious Project that I'm very, very excited about, which is a new way of raising money collaboratively. It's trying to encourage change makers to dream bigger and then taking their giant dreams to groups of donors who can afford to go in big, and persuade them to come in big together to try and break out of this, what is an unpleasant feeling about big philanthropy, that it's just one person's sort of whim about how they want to change the world. I don't like that any more than anyone else does. But so the Audacious Project is growing. This last year, we actually raised $1 billion just over in a single retreat, focused on 10 projects. And it was a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing to see. It was actually its own example of infectious generosity. So I want to further grow that and to make it, if possible, like in my dream of the future, the whole world would get incredibly excited about the biggest new jaw-dropping change projects that are done by, not through the markets. The markets are great, but not through the markets, but through by charitable organizations that are exciting and that we can all get behind. And there are incredible possibilities out there that I think would have the capability to thrill people. Structurally now, it's very hard for them to go out and ask for billions of dollars, for example, to imagine some giant project. But I think we should try collectively to fix that, basically by looking at what's possible there. So I'm thinking about that quite a lot as well. And then on the book itself and where we hope that goes. I mean, look, I'd obviously like a lot of people to read it. I do think there's an idea whose time has come, and that it's not just you and me, Bill, who's sick of how mean the world is and who thinks that there is a different way that we could think about each other. There's an AI that we've created.
Yes, I was going to ask you about that. Good. Tell us more.
So the Infectious Generosity Guru, TIG, TIGG.
I love this.
If you go to infectiousgenerosity.org, you can sign up actually and start playing with TIG straight away. TIG's goal is to just help brainstorm with you what you, given your particular set of interests and skills, could do that would create some infectious generosity. And it's based on ChatGPT, but it's got a lot of other features to it that keep the conversation going in a delightful way. Can help you create social media images and stuff like that to share and bring in other people. It's fun, and we had one person who played with it say, "This has literally changed my life." And I don't promise that for everyone, but I do think it's another fun way to engage.
I wanted to ask you about it. I'm glad you brought it up because it's like anything. Technology is only as good as how you use it, right? And we talked about how the internet went astray and social media went astray, and a lot of that was on us and how we used it. And so to take AI, which has, with some good reason, I think, scares people a little bit, but if we use it right, it could change everything.
Yes, it's one reason why I feel urgency about the book is that AI is basically trained on the internet, and the internet we have today, that's not the right internet to train what the force that's going to shape our future. So, there are a lot of people in AI who are urgently looking to apply kind of reflective thinking, fine tuning to the outputs of what comes out. This is such an important project, and anyway, it's certainly
yes,
it is absolutely amazing what AI can do. I myself have had ideas from TIG that I'd never have thought about, and I'm going to unveil some of them, I hope, on X over the next few weeks. So it's fun, and it's free to at least until we hit our spending budget on it. So for now, it's free.
I wanted to underscore the urgency of this because someone else I spoke to talked about, they use the expression algorithmic bias, and that AI will start with sort of the base case of what's on the internet now. This particular person was pushing a project on more data on women's health statistics because women tend to be underreported in a lot of things. And if AI builds off of underreporting, the underreporting gets exaggerated or the overreporting gets exaggerated. Same thing with kindness, generosity, positive things on the internet. The more we can get that out there now, the better this is going to be amplified by
Yes,
AI.
100%.
So, Chris Anderson, if you had done nothing else but what you did with TED, you would have a career and a life that you could be so proud of. I think what you're doing with Infectious Generosity is just next level. And again, I'm particularly enthusiastic about this book. I've read and reviewed many others on this show, but I think this one is so in the wheelhouse of what we're trying to do here that I am really pulling for you. And I can't thank you enough for the work that you've done.
Well, thank you so much, Bill. I really feel what you're doing. I mean, optimism is really important in the world. There was a moment on the TED stage many years ago when Craig Venter, the biologist who basically cracked the human genome, was asked whether he thought the optimists or the pessimists were right about the future. He said, "I don't know, but I have noticed this. It's the optimists who get things done." and I think this is the thing. Like, I don't see optimism as it's often characterized, right, as this people have this happy feeling because they're blind to the problems that are out there in the world, or it's a prediction. I'm an optimist. I predict things will go well. That I doubt this is what you at heart believe. It's a stance, right? To me, it's a stance of saying, we have to, if we're to have a chance, we have to look for a pathway to a better future. We have to believe that pathway exists. And then we have to do all in our power to illuminate that pathway so that people can go, okay, that's persuasive. I like that. I like that little glimpse of light in the future. I am coming with you. And it's sort of, it's not a prediction. It's not a feeling. I often feel very blue some days, and I think of what's out there. But I think we're determined optimists. Like we're determined to highlight that pathway, and if it can be opened and walked down, let's do that.
I'll throw this expression back at you, 100%. Thank you so much, Chris, for everything you've done and for taking this time to be on our show. I really appreciate it. By now, you can probably see why I hope Chris Anderson sells a lot of these books and that his vision for this movement takes off. The Audacious project is a great way to start, and I also had some fun with his new TIG AI platform. You might want to try it out, as it's a great use of AI and an example of how these new technologies can be used for good. And how about Chris's description and definition of optimism? I promise I did not pay him to say any of that. With his encouragement and the courage he's showing to take a public position on this, I am ready to press on with our efforts to reclaim the internet. After all, as he says, optimists are the ones who get things done. So who else out there is with us? Let's work together and get this done. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with TED leader and author of Infectious Generosity, Chris Anderson. If you enjoy this non-lizard brain feeding content, consider subscribing to this podcast and our monthly newsletter, Blue Sky Weekend, and follow the Optimism Institute on social media. Until next time, I'm the founder of the Optimism Institute and host of Blue Sky, Bill Burke, and I thank you for listening.